I stared at my wife's phone, rage hardening into ice in my veins. The messages were explicit, unmistakable. Photos, plans, declarations of passion between her and David, her so-called professional partner. One message particularly burned into my brain. Can't wait for one more night before you head home. Home, to me, to our marriage of 12 years. I took screenshots methodically, my hands steady despite the storm inside me. Then I placed her phone exactly where I'd found it on the nightstand. She wouldn't be back from San Francisco for 3 more days, plenty of time for what I needed to do. Some men would scream, break things, call her immediately with accusations. Weak men. I wasn't going to give her the satisfaction of my emotional breakdown. No, my response would be much more powerful. My name is Michael Grayson. Until almost a year ago, I commanded respect as a fire captain in Denver, with a beautiful photographer wife named Laura, and a life most men would envy. Now I live off the grid near Flathead Lake, Montana, teaching survival skills to tourists and living entirely on my own terms. Laura and I met during a downtown warehouse fire. She was photographing for the Denver Chronicle, getting dangerously close to the action. I pulled her back just as a wall collapsed where she'd been standing. When the smoke cleared, she asked for my number for a human interest piece, she claimed. 3 months later, we were engaged. For 10 years, we were solid. I advanced through the fire department ranks. She built her photography business. We traveled when possible, hiked the Rockies on weekends, talked about kids someday, but never got there. Then she landed her contract with National Geographic 2 years ago. This changes everything, Mike, she'd said the night she got the news. It did, but not in the way either of us expected. The first assignments were manageable. A week photographing wildlife in Yellowstone, 10 days capturing glaciers in Alaska. She'd return home energized, and we'd reconnect intensely. Then the trips grew longer. 2 weeks in Costa Rica, 3 in Kenya trailing conservationist. It's the nature of the work, she'd explain whenever I questioned the extended absences. You can't rush the perfect shot. I understood timing. As a firefighter, timing meant everything: when to advance, when to retreat, when to change tactics. So I adapted, built my own routines, stayed focused on my career. Then came the San Francisco project, 6 months documenting urban renewal, requiring weekly trips to the Bay Area. And David Sloan entered our story. He's the writer paired with me for the series, Laura explained over dinner after her first week. Used to work for The New Yorker. I caught the way her eyes lit up when she mentioned him, the slight flush in her cheeks. I saw it all but said nothing. Observation is a survival skill. David thinks my composition is revolutionary. She'd drop into conversation. David says we might win an award for this series. David took me to this amazing spot in Chinatown, strictly professional, of course. I've never been the jealous type. In firefighting, trust is everything. You need absolute confidence in your team when entering a burning building. I extended that same trust to my marriage, even when she started taking calls in other rooms, even when our sex life became scheduled rather than spontaneous, even when she began returning from trips with a different energy, until that message preview flashed across her screen at 2 a.m. Still taste you on my lips. That night, I lay beside her, studying the face I'd woken up to for 12 years, realizing I'd been sleeping next to a stranger. When morning came, I kissed her goodbye, as usual, before her flight. I love you, she said casually. Safe travels, I replied, already executing my exit strategy in my mind. Once her flight status showed departed, I moved with military precision. I emptied exactly half our joint account. Not a penny more, not a penny less. Packed one duffel with essentials. Called my fire chief with my resignation, citing a personal emergency. Left a brief note for my brother Tommy, a former Marine. Need to disappear for a while. I'm okay. Will contact when I can. Then I drove northwest with no destination beyond away from here. 11 months can strip a man down to his core. Living in near isolation, working with your hands, being removed from your former identity, it reveals who you really are beneath the titles and relationships. I landed in Kalispell by necessity when my truck needed repairs. With limited cash, I found work at a sporting goods store, then later at the Lodge, an upscale resort where wealthy tourists paid premium rates for authentic wilderness experiences. Rachel, the lodge owner, hired me immediately after I demonstrated basic survival techniques. These tech executives will pay $2,000 a weekend to learn how to make fire without matches, she explained pragmatically. You're competent and keep to yourself. When can you start? Rachel was attractive, late 30s, confident, capable. She flirted occasionally but respected the clear boundaries I established. Whoever she was, she did quite a number on you, she remarked once after I declined her dinner invitation. That obvious? You've got that look of someone who survived an explosion but is still checking for shrapnel. No rush. Some wounds need proper time to heal. Time I had in abundance. I built a new routine, up at dawn, physical work until exhaustion, minimal social interaction. I grew a beard, lost the softness city life had given me, gained muscle from daily labor, started keeping a journal to organize my thoughts, processing everything without the noise of well-intentioned advice from others. I wrote about rage that ran cold rather than hot, about calculating precisely how to remove myself from a situation rather than destroying it, about strategic thinking rather than emotional reaction. I wrote until I understood my own power, the power of absence. I maintained radio silence on all fronts. No social media, no Google searches of her name. Complete severance was the only path forward. I bought a basic prepaid phone for emergencies and gave the number only to Tommy with strict instructions. She's looking for you, he told me during one of our monthly calls. Hired a private investigator. She knows why I left, I stated. She showed up at my place crying, claiming you disappeared without explanation. Wanted to know if you were safe. What did you tell her? That you're alive and that's all she gets to know. Good man, Tommy. You planning to come back, Mike? Nothing to come back to. What I didn't share with Tommy was that I'd found unexpected peace in this new existence. The lodge attracted an interesting clientele, from corporate executives to serious outdoorsmen. I developed a reputation as skilled, reserved, and unquestionably in control. Female guests occasionally showed interest. I declined without explanation. For the first time since meeting Laura, I focused entirely on my own path, rather than accommodating someone else's journey. The irony wasn't lost on me. I'd had to lose everything to reclaim my independence. Winter arrived in Montana with brutal efficiency. Tourist traffic slowed to occasional weekend warriors. I split firewood, maintained equipment, and led the rare ice fishing expedition for the hardier guests. The isolation intensified with the shortened days, but I'd grown comfortable with solitude. Until the day she found me. December 18th. I remember the date clearly, the day after the lodge's staff holiday gathering. I was checking in a family from Minnesota when the front door opened, bringing a blast of cold air and the last person I expected to see. Laura stood in the entryway, snowflakes melting in her hair, her face thinner than I remembered, eyes uncertain as they met mine. She wore a red wool coat I didn't recognize, gripping a small suitcase. Time compressed. The family at the counter faded to background noise. My body instinctively tensed, ready for confrontation. Room for one, she said quietly, approaching after the Minnesota family moved away. No dramatic greeting, no tears, just 3 practical words. I could have refused her, could have told her to leave, could have demanded how she found me. Instead, I methodically entered her information, swiped her credit card, and handed her a key. Cabin 8, last one on the left path. Breakfast starts at 7. My voice remained level, giving away nothing. Thank you, she replied, her fingers briefly touching mine as she took the key. She hesitated then. You look good, Michael. I offered no response, just a directional nod toward the cabins. She left without another word. I maintained my composure until reaching the staff bathroom, where my stomach heaved once in physical rejection of her sudden appearance. Rachel found me washing my face with cold water. That woman who checked in, she's your past, isn't she? Rachel asked directly. I nodded once, drying my hands methodically. Want me to tell her we're overbooked, make her leave? I considered it briefly. No, I've been out running this for almost a year. Time to face it head on. Rachel squeezed my shoulder. My apartment's above the office if you need somewhere to regroup. That night, sleep evaded me. I paced my cabin, calculating the distance between my door and cabin 8. What was her purpose here? How had she tracked me down? What could she possibly want after all this time? At 3 in the morning, I walked to the frozen lake edge. The moon illuminated the ice, stars blazing overhead with winter clarity. I stood until the cold cleared my thoughts, focusing my resolve. By dawn, I'd made my decision. I would hear her out, say what needed saying, and continue forward, with or without whatever closure she sought. I'd reclaimed my life once. I could do it again. Laura was waiting in the empty dining room when I arrived to prepare morning coffee. She sat with hands wrapped around a mug of tea, looking simultaneously familiar and foreign. "You found me," I stated, making coffee with precise movements, maintaining the counter barrier between us. "It took longer than I expected. You disappeared thoroughly." She studied me openly. "The beard suits you." "Why are you here, Laura?" Direct, no preamble. She took a measured breath. "Not to beg forgiveness, not to try winning you back. You deserve better than that." "What I deserved was a wife who didn't cheat," I responded, voice cutting like a blade. She flinched but maintained eye contact. "Yes, you did." The simple acknowledgement rather than excuses caught me off guard. "I'm here because you vanished without explanation. Because I returned to an empty house and a missing husband. Because for weeks I thought you might be dead until Tommy finally confirmed you were alive, but wouldn't share anything else." "You know exactly why I left," I stated flatly. "Yes, now I do, but I didn't then." I laughed without humor. "Convenient. I saw everything, Laura. The messages, the photos, all of it." She closed her eyes briefly. "I knew something was wrong that morning. My phone had been moved, but you acted completely normal when you said goodbye." She shook her head. "I didn't piece it together until I returned from San Francisco to find you gone." Early rising guests began entering the dining area. I lowered my voice. "We're not doing this here. I'm working until 3. Cabin 14 is empty for maintenance. Meet me there if you want to talk." She nodded, and I left for the woodshed where I spent the morning splitting logs with focused precision until my muscles burned with satisfying exertion. Cabin 14 smelled of pine cleaner and fresh paint. I built a fire efficiently, needing occupation for my hands. Laura arrived precisely at 3, now wearing jeans and a heavy sweater, hair pulled back in a simple ponytail, like she used to wear it before glossy magazine assignments changed her style. "How did you find me?" I asked immediately as she sat in an armchair. "Does it matter?" "Humor me." My tone made clear it wasn't a request. She sighed. "Your credit card. One transaction for gas in Missoula last January. By the time the investigator tracked it, the trail had gone cold. Then Tommy mentioned you were somewhere near Flathead. I've been searching the area for months, staying in different towns, showing your photo. A waitress in Kalispell recognized you." I nodded, mentally noting the security breach. I could disappear again within hours if necessary. "Your turn," she said. "Why leave like that, Michael? Why not confront me?" I stared into the flames. What would confrontation have accomplished? You would have lied, like you'd been lying for months. You'd have minimized it or somehow twisted it to blame me. Maybe promised it would never happen again. I fixed her with a direct gaze. "But it wasn't a mistake, was it? It was a deliberate choice you made repeatedly." She didn't attempt denial. "You're right. It wasn't a one-time thing." "How long?" 4 months. The number hit like a physical blow. 4 months of deception, coming home to me, sleeping beside me, all while carrying another man's touch. "Did you love him?" The question emerged before I could stop it. "I thought I did," she admitted quietly. "I convinced myself it was something meaningful, not just cheap betrayal. That made it easier to justify." "And now?" I know it was neither love nor special, just selfish destruction." She leaned forward. "I'm not here to win you back, Michael. I'm here because you should know that I lost more than you. I lost myself." I cut through her self-reflection with a dismissive sound. "Spare me the victim narrative, Laura." "It's not victimhood, it's truth." Her voice hardened. "David dumped me 2 weeks after you disappeared. Said things were too complicated now. The magazine dropped our project when rumors spread. Apparently, sleeping with your writing partner violates professional ethics. Her laugh was brittle. I lost 3 other contracts. Had to sell our house. Couldn't afford it alone. Spent months in therapy trying to understand why I destroyed everything good in my life. Am I supposed to feel sorry for you? I asked, though some part of me felt vindicated by her downfall. No, you're supposed to understand that your disappearance was the most powerful response anyone has ever given me. Her eyes glistened. You didn't rage or threaten or try to hurt him. You simply removed yourself from the equation. Left me to face exactly who I'd become without the benefit of making you the villain. Silence filled the room except for crackling flames. Outside, snow began falling, heavy flakes visible through the window. I'm not the same man who left Denver, I finally said. That person ceased to exist the night I saw those messages. I know. I'm not the same either. She reached into her bag and pulled out an envelope. I wrote everything down, things I couldn't say directly. What happened with David, what happened after. You can read it or burn it, your choice. She placed it on the table between us. I'm staying 3 days. Then I'll go and you'll never have to see me again if that's what you want. She stood to leave, pausing briefly. For what it's worth, Michael, and I know it means very little now, I've never regretted anything more in my life. After she left, I stared at the envelope for hours, watching shadows move across the cabin floor. Eventually, I picked it up and placed it unopened in my jacket pocket. Some truths required proper timing. I avoided the main lodge the next day, leading an all-day snowshoeing expedition for a group of corporate lawyers. The physical demands and responsibility for others' safety provided temporary distance from the emotional confrontation Laura's appearance had triggered. When I returned, Rachel waited with a thermos of whiskey-laced coffee. She came looking for you, Rachel said, handing me a steaming cup. I told her you were out with clients. Appreciate it. She's attractive, looks expensive. Rachel's assessment remained neutral. She used to be different. People change. Not always for the better. Rachel studied me over her mug. You know what they say about forest fires? Sometimes they're necessary. Clear out the dead growth so new life can emerge. Your way of saying this confrontation might be beneficial? She shrugged. Just saying sometimes destruction serves a purpose. That night in my cabin, I finally opened Laura's letter. 8 pages of her familiar handwriting. Once intimate, now like receiving a message from a stranger. She detailed everything without excuses. How the affair began after a late photography session. How David made her feel valued in ways she hadn't recognized were missing. How excitement became addiction. How she compartmentalized, telling herself I would never discover it. That she could maintain both worlds. Then came the aftermath. David's immediate abandonment once complications arose. The professional consequences, her parents' disappointment, the crushing realization that she'd traded substance for illusion. The final paragraph struck with precision. I don't expect or deserve forgiveness, but you should know that your silence was more powerful than any rage could have been. You forced me to judge myself without the distraction of your anger. There was no one to blame, no one fighting me, just the pure consequence of my actions reflected in an empty house. It broke me in ways I needed to be broken. I hope someday you find happiness again. You, more than anyone I've known, deserve it. I read the letter 3 times, then went outside and split wood in the moonlight until my muscles demanded relief. The second day, I found Laura sitting alone on the lodge's back deck despite the biting cold. She wore a borrowed parka too large for her frame, staring out at the frozen lake. I assessed the situation, then deliberately sat in the adjacent chair. I read your letter, I stated after a measured silence. She nodded, still looking at the lake. And nothing, it is what it is. You always did have a gift for directness. A slight smile touched her lips. Why come all this way? Why not just call? She turned to face me. Would you have answered if I called? No. There's your answer. She pulled the parka tighter. Besides, I needed to see your face to know you're really okay. I'm not okay, I admitted, but I'm getting there. You seem stronger somehow, more definite. Losing everything has that effect. You strip life down to fundamentals. A wind gust sent snow swirling across the deck. Laura shivered. You should go inside, I advised. In a minute. She hesitated. I saw your journal in your cabin desk when I dropped off the letter. Are you writing again? The question surprised me. In our early years, I'd written, mostly stories I never showed anyone. It had fallen away with career advancement and life's complications. Just organizing thoughts, nothing creative. You should try again. You were good. There's a lot I should try again. I stood. But some things aren't meant to be revisited. Her expression fell slightly, acknowledging my meaning. Fair enough. As I turned to leave, she said, Tommy misses you. He won't admit it, but he does. Tommy knows how to find me. He says the same about you. I paused. Maybe in the spring. It wasn't a commitment, but it was something. A calculated opening in the wall I'd constructed. That night, I dreamed of controlled fire. Not the chaotic blazes I'd fought as a firefighter, but a tactical burn, necessary and purifying. I woke with unexpected clarity. On the third day, her final day, a massive snowstorm hit the region. The lodge lost power around noon. Emergency generators maintained essential systems, but we advised guests to remain in their cabins, which had fireplaces and emergency provisions. I was helping Rachel distribute extra blankets when I realized Laura was nowhere to be seen. Her car remained in the lot, rapidly disappearing under fresh snow. She went for a walk early this morning, one of the housekeepers mentioned, said something about wanting to see the North Trail before she left. The North Trail, 5 miles through dense forest, beautiful but dangerous during a storm. Even experienced hikers could lose orientation when landmarks disappeared under snow. How long ago, I demanded, already reaching for my gear. 4, maybe 5 hours? Rachel caught my expression. You're not going out in this. I have to. She doesn't know these woods. Michael, visibility is 0, temperature's dropping. You could both end up dead. I'll take the emergency radio and GPS, mark coordinates every quarter mile. I was already layering up. If I'm not back in 3 hours, call search and rescue. Rachel knew better than to argue further. She helped me pack emergency supplies. Her movements efficient, but her expression grim. She must still mean something to you, she observed as I checked the radio. She was my wife for 12 years, I replied with finality. Be careful. She squeezed my arm. This hero instinct will get you killed someday. I gave her a tight nod. Calculated risk assessment. I know these woods. The moment I stepped outside, the storm's ferocity hit full force. Wind-driven snow stung any exposed skin, visibility extending barely 10 feet. I pulled down my goggles and moved toward the North Trail, pushing through knee-deep drifts. Under normal conditions, I could hike the entire trail in under 2 hours. In this weather, it took 45 minutes just to reach the first mile marker. I called Laura's name periodically, the wind swallowing my voice almost immediately. 2 miles in, I found her first sign, a red scarf caught on a branch. My focus sharpened. She was here somewhere, probably disoriented, possibly hypothermic if she'd been out for hours. Laura, I shouted, cupping hands around my mouth. Nothing. I pressed forward, scanning for any disruption in the snow pattern. Another half mile and I spotted footprints veering off trail, a classic sign of someone lost, likely trying to find shelter. The tracks led toward a cluster of large boulders forming a natural windbreak. As I approached, I saw a huddled figure pressed against the rock face, partially snow-covered. Laura's face was dangerously pale, her lips blue-tinged. She was conscious, but clearly in mid-stage hypothermia, shivering violently, speech slurred. Michael, how did you find me? Tracking, I said simply, immediately unfolding the emergency thermal blanket and wrapping it around her. Can you walk? She tried standing, but her legs collapsed. Can't feel my feet. Not a problem. I've got you. I lifted her efficiently. She weighed less than I remembered and secured her against my chest. Keep talking. Stay conscious. So stupid, she mumbled against my shoulder. Thought I'd be back before the storm hit. Less talking about mistakes, more focusing on staying awake, I directed, beginning the challenging return journey. Each step demanded maximum effort against wind and snow, my muscles working at capacity carrying her through deepening drifts. Why'd you come for me? She asked after what felt like hours of movement. Could have let me disappear too. That's not who I am, I stated firmly, adjusting my grip. Never was. That's why I loved you, she whispered. Still do. I didn't respond, concentrating instead on navigating through near whiteout conditions. When the lodge's lights finally appeared through the snow curtain, relief nearly buckled my knees. Rachel and two male staff members rushed out, taking Laura from my arms and hurrying her inside to the fireplace. I remained in the doorway, suddenly recognizing my physical limits, watching as they removed her wet outer layers and wrapped her in dry blankets. Her eyes found mine across the room, grateful, pained, filled with unspoken words. I turned away, needing distance to process what had just happened, what it meant that I'd risked my life to save hers without hesitation. Rachel found me later in the kitchen, methodically drinking coffee, still in my snow-crusted gear. She's going to be fine, she reported. No frostbite, just mild hypothermia. Doctor says she was lucky. Good. That was either incredibly brave or remarkably foolish, Rachel said, sitting opposite me. Probably both. I shrugged. I knew the terrain, had proper equipment. That's not what I meant, and you know it. She studied me closely. You still care about her. It's complicated. It always is. She rose, squeezing my shoulder as she passed. She's asking for you, room 3. We moved her inside the main lodge for the night. I sat alone after Rachel left, strategizing my next move. The storm continued to rage outside, mirroring my internal conflict. Eventually, I made my way to room 3 and knocked firmly. Come in, Laura called, her voice stronger than on the mountain. She was propped up in bed, color returned to her face, wrapped in several blankets. An IV bag hung beside the bed, fluids for rehydration. Thank you, she said simply as I took the chair recliner beside the bed. I would have died out there. What were you thinking hiking with the storm approaching? My tone carried no accusation, just direct questioning. I wasn't thinking tactically. Wanted one last look at the place that had become your sanctuary. She adjusted the blanket edge. I'm postponing departure, obviously. Doctor says no travel for at least 2 days. I nodded once. Whatever necessary. Michael, she began, then hesitated. Out there, when you found me, I said something. You were hypothermic, I interrupted. Altered mental state. That doesn't make it untrue. Her eyes held mine. I do still love you, never stopped, but that's my burden to carry, not yours. I stood, needing distance from the emotional current. You should rest. Wait, she called as I reached the door. There's something else you should know, something I didn't include in the letter because I wanted to tell you directly. I paused, hand on the doorknob. David contacted me last month, wanted to reconnect now that his new relationship had collapsed. Her voice hardened. I told him exactly where to go, told him what I'd lost through our selfishness. He laughed, Michael, said I was being dramatic. I turned back, surprised by the controlled anger in her expression. That's when I knew I had to find you, she continued. Not to win you back. I understand that bridges burned. But to tell you that you were right to leave as you did. It was the only way I would ever comprehend the magnitude of what I'd done. A weighted silence filled the room. Thank you for telling me, I finally said. I'm not asking for another chance, Michael. I don't deserve one. I just needed you to know that at least one of us finally understands the cost. I nodded once, then left, closing the door firmly behind me. The storm continued for 2 more days, effectively confining everyone to the lodge. I maintained focus on emergency operations and guest needs, encountering Laura only at mealtimes, where we exchanged civil but distanced conversation. On the afternoon the roads were finally cleared, I found her in the lobby, suitcase packed, settling her bill with Rachel. Your car's been excavated, I said, approaching with measured steps. Tires should handle fine, but take the mountain passes slowly. They're still icy in sections. I will, she hesitated. I guess this is goodbye then. I guess it is. Rachel tactfully moved away, giving us privacy. What will you do now, I asked. Back to Denver. I've been taking assignments from smaller publications. It's not National Geographic, but it's honest work. She adjusted her scarf, a new one, since her red one remained lost in the forest. What about you? Will you stay here? For now, it suits my purposes. She nodded, eyes scanning my face as if committing it to memory. You know where to find me if you ever want to talk. No pressure, no expectations. I know. We stood briefly in the compressed space of 12 years of shared history. I have something for you, I said decisively, reaching into my pocket. I handed her a small, worn notebook. My journal, the first one. She took it with evident surprise. Michael, I can't. I want you to have it. Maybe it'll help you understand everything. Her fingers trembled, slightly accepting it. Thank you. Impulsively, she rose on tiptoes and kissed my cheek, a ghost of familiar intimacy that I neither welcomed nor rejected. Be happy, Michael, she whispered. That's all I want for you now. I watched from the lodge steps as she drove away, snow swirling in her wake until her taillights vanished around the mountain curve. Rachel appeared beside me, her breath clouding in the cold air. You all right? Getting there, I replied with genuine assessment. She might come back, you know. Maybe. I turned toward the lodge, but I won't be waiting. That night, I began a new journal. The first entry was direct. Today, I buried the past, not with forgiveness, I'm not there yet, but with clarity. We were both flawed in different ways. Now we're both rebuilding in different places. That will have to suffice. 2 weeks after Laura left, my phone rang with an unfamiliar number. My brother Tommy's voice came through, uncharacteristically tentative. Mike, you sitting down? My body tensed. What happened? It's Laura. She was in an accident on I-25 outside Denver, head-on collision with a drunk driver. The world shifted momentarily. Is she? She's alive, but it's critical, Mike. Multiple surgeries. They're uncertain. He trailed off. Who else knows my location? I demanded. Just called her sister Emma. She requested your number. Said Laura's been asking for you. I closed my eyes briefly, images flashing. Laura laughing in our kitchen, Laura sleeping beside me, Laura walking away from the lodge. Give Emma my number, I decided. You heading back? Tommy asked. I haven't decided, but I found myself checking flight times from Kalispell to Denver even as we spoke. Emma called an hour later, her voice raw from crying. Michael, it's Emma. I don't know if you'll come, but she keeps asking for you. The doctors say... Her voice broke. They're advising us to prepare for the worst. What hospital? Denver Memorial, ICU, 4th floor. I'll let you know my decision. I paced my cabin for hours that night, wrestling with conflicting impulses. Part of me wanted to remain detached, to protect the new life I'd built. Another part recognized that without proper closure, Laura's ghost would haunt me indefinitely. By morning, I'd reached a decision. I booked a flight rather than driving, more efficient, and left Rachel a note explaining my temporary absence. Going to Denver, personal matter, back in 3 days. The flight from Kalispell to Denver gave me time to prepare mentally. I would visit briefly, make my peace, and return to Montana without being drawn back into emotional entanglement. Clean, controlled, conclusive. Emma met me at the hospital entrance, her face pale with exhaustion. She embraced me tightly, unexpected, given our previously distant relationship. Thank you for coming, she whispered. How is she? My tone remained neutral. Emma's expression crumpled. Critical, internal bleeding, collapsed lung, spinal injury, 2 surgeries already. She gestured toward the elevators. She's conscious but heavily medicated. She may not recognize you. I nodded, steeling myself before following her to the ICU. The woman in the hospital bed barely resembled the Laura I remembered. Her face was mottled with bruises, one eye swollen shut. Tubes and wires connected her to various machines, each beep a reminder of her precarious state. I approached deliberately, taking the chair beside her bed. Her hand, the one not encased in a cast, lay palm up on the white sheet. After brief consideration, I placed my fingers against hers. Her uncovered eye fluttered open at the contact. Recognition dawned slowly through the medication haze. Michael? Her voice was barely audible above the machine sounds. You came. I came, I confirmed simply. Didn't think... You would. I needed closure. A small smile touched her cracked lips. Always honest. I leaned closer, keeping my voice low. I can't stay long, Laura. I've built a new life. I know. Her fingers weakly curled around mine. Just glad to see you one more time. I sat with her through the afternoon, maintaining emotional distance while providing the human contact she clearly needed. When doctors arrived for their evening rounds, I took the opportunity to step out. I need to speak with you, I told Emma in the waiting area, about practical matters. Emma looked startled by my directness, but nodded. I'm returning to Montana tomorrow, I stated without preamble. I can't be part of this situation long term. But she needs you, Michael. The doctors say having loved ones present improves recovery chances. I'm not her loved one anymore, Emma. That ended when she chose David. Emma's eyes flashed with momentary anger. So you're just going to leave her like this, when she might be dying? I'm not responsible for her recovery. My voice remained level. I came to say goodbye properly. That's all I can offer. She still loves you. That's unfortunate for her. Emma stared at me, clearly shocked by my coldness. You've changed. Yes, for the better. When I returned to Laura's room, she was awake, watching the door as if expecting me. You're leaving, she said immediately, her perception undiminished despite her physical state. I didn't insult her with denials. Tomorrow morning. She nodded slightly, wincing at the movement. I understand. Do you? I asked, reclaiming the chair beside her bed. You've rebuilt your life. I have no place in it. Her voice was stronger now, as if gathering her remaining energy for this conversation. I wouldn't want you to stay out of pity. Good, because I won't. Her undamaged eye studied me. There's something different about you now. Something harder. I had to become harder to survive what happened. I'm sorry, Michael, for everything. I know you are, but that doesn't change anything. She closed her eye briefly. Before you go, did you read my journal? The one I left at your cabin? I shook my head. Not yet. Please do, when you're ready. Her breathing became more labored. I need you to understand why I did what I did, not to excuse it, but to explain. I'll read it, eventually. She seemed satisfied with this partial commitment. One more thing. The night you left, you took your grandfather's watch. Do you still have it? The question surprised me. Yes, why? Good, he'd be proud of the man you've become. The simple statement hit with unexpected force. My grandfather had been a formidable figure in my childhood, stoic, principled, uncompromising. The watch had been his parting gift to me before he died. I have something for you, Laura continued, gesturing weakly toward the small cabinet beside her bed. Top drawer. I opened it, finding a manila envelope with my name written in her handwriting. What's this? Open it later, when you're home. I placed the envelope in my jacket pocket without examining it. I should go, let you rest. Will I see you before you leave tomorrow? I considered lying, offering false comfort. Instead, I gave her truth. No, this is goodbye, Laura. She nodded, a single tear escaping her undamaged eye. I understand. Thank you for coming at all. I stood looking down at this broken version of the woman I'd once loved beyond reason. Take care of yourself, Laura. You too, Michael. She managed a small smile. Be happy. You deserve it. I left without looking back, ignoring Emma's accusing stare as I passed the waiting area. That night in my hotel room, curiosity finally compelled me to open the envelope Laura had given me. Inside was a legal document, property transfer papers for a small cabin on 10 acres near Estes Park. According to the deed, she had purchased it 6 months ago and was now transferring ownership to me. A note was clipped to the papers. This was meant to be a peace offering when I found you, a place where you could write away from everything. Now I want you to have it without conditions. It's yours, whether you ever speak to me again or not. The realtor has the keys. I stared at the documents, conflicted. On one hand, accepting felt like allowing her back into my life in some form. On the other, the property represented financial security in a private retreat, practical advantages I couldn't dismiss. After consideration, I decided to keep the papers. I could decide later whether to accept the property or sell it. The choice would be mine alone. My flight back to Montana left early the next morning. I didn't call Emma or return to the hospital. Some endings needed to be clean, without the messiness of second thoughts or emotional farewells. Rachel met me at the small Kalispell airport, leaning against her truck with casual confidence. "Welcome back," she said simply. "Everything handled?" "Yes," I replied, tossing my duffel into the truck bed. "Permanently." She studied me for a moment before starting the engine. "You look different, lighter somehow." I made some necessary decisions. "About your ex?" "About my future." Rachel nodded, seeming to understand the distinction. "Good. Speaking of futures, there's an instructor position opening up at the Mountain Rescue Training Center near Whitefish. Director's an old friend, mentioned you might be perfect for it." I considered the opportunity: professional advancement, better pay, work aligned with my skills and experience. "Sounds interesting. They're looking for someone who can start next month." She glanced at me. "If you're planning to stick around." "I am." She smiled, the first genuine smile I'd seen from her since before Laura's appearance. "Glad to hear it. I'd hate to lose my best survival instructor." "Is that all you'd hate to lose?" I asked, surprising myself with the directness of the question. Rachel's eyes widened slightly before she recovered her composure. "That depends on what's being offered." "Dinner, tonight, just us." She pretended to consider, though the slight flush in her cheeks betrayed her. "I think that could be arranged." As we drove through the snow-covered landscape toward the lodge, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Possibility. Not a return to what was, but the potential for something entirely new, built on stronger foundations. 2 weeks later, I received a brief message from Emma. "Laura's out of critical condition, long recovery ahead, but doctors are cautiously optimistic. Thought you should know." I read it once, then deleted it without responding. That chapter was closed. The same day I accepted the position at the Mountain Rescue Training Center and signed the papers accepting ownership of the Estes Park cabin. Not as a connection to Laura, but as an asset I could use or sell on my own terms. That night, Rachel and I hiked to a ridge overlooking Flathead Lake, the sunset painting the frozen surface in brilliant oranges and reds. "Beautiful view," she commented, standing close enough that our shoulders touched. "New perspective," I replied, understanding we were talking about more than just the landscape. She turned to face me, her expression open but cautious. "Is this really what you want, Michael? No lingering ghosts?" I considered the question seriously. "I've dealt with my ghosts, made peace with the past. I'm ready for what's next." "And what is next?" she asked. I gestured toward the vast wilderness spread before us. "This, now, the life I've chosen, not the one I lost." She smiled, understanding the significance of the distinction. "I can work with that." As the last light faded from the sky, I felt the final weight of my old life lift away. I had disappeared once out of necessity. Now I was reappearing by choice, stronger, clearer, and entirely on my own terms. It was enough, more than enough,